I want to know if he's bunking up with Tyrrell, and if he's the big spoon or the little spoon. I think he'd be the little spoon just out of principle. Because Tyrrell's kind of, he's got the elderly gravitas.
Yeah, and that's true. And using those key stats, they are the key things that we've used to pick out our emergency men. I don't appreciate the laughing because I recognize how fumbled that was as I lost my train of thought. But anyways, back to the emergency.
No.
Wait, what was that?
I like that you came back to start it off fresh. We're gonna do it live, damn it. 3, 2, 1.
The breaking news is that the freaking intro little button there didn't work. Breaking news, though, guys. I don't know if anybody else gives a crap about this, but I do. The jury's out. I am an above average golfer, and that's just the truth. That's what the numbers say. It's exciting for me. That's the breaking news. Get with the program, and I got news for all of you. Y'all might be above average golfers too. USGA came out with some fantastic stats that Bud was so gracious to hunt down and share with me this past weekend, where we break down the handicaps of all the golfers in men, women, and the numbers will surprise you. I'm a 13 handicap. Apparently, the average handicap for male golfers is 14. So above average, you can't argue with that. That's numbers. Bud, how are you this morning or this evening?
Morale is above average. We'll put it that way. Did you just say you're a 13 handicap?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was the last time I calculated it a year ago.
How do you calculate your handicap? Let's start there.
So I did it through. It was 2 years ago now. Actually, now that you say that, 2 years ago, I was in a league and they had an app and it calculated it.
Okay. I was about to say you're not just tracking your scores and like taking the average.
No.
There's actually an overwhelmingly, I'm not gonna say complex, but like it takes a minute to wrap your head around it. System that they use for how many scores you have to submit. They take like 20 out of this sample. They drop the highs and the lows, and all that kind of stuff. And the guy who created it, that's another fun backstory that we will talk about another day. Because when you said breaking news, I thought you were going to go with something that I'm going to get into later about the update. Kind of the reason I have a new man crush.
Oh.
His name's Brandel Chambly.
Okay.
I think I think a lot of people, when I say he's a controversial figure, I think people look for things to get upset about, or we live in a very, if you're not for me, you're against me kind of mentality in a world. And his entire job is to have an informed opinion. And I think it rubs people the wrong way because he just has opinions that differ and he values different things. And we're in this era of, I'm going to be unapologetically myself. Yet here's a guy who consistently just gets shit on by golf Twitter and everybody else because he's got opinions. Well, guess what? I agree with him. And the reason Brandel Chambly is my new man crush is it's the Players Week. It's no secret about it. This is the flagship event for the tour. The fifth major, that moniker came up on a Golf Central or Golf Central Live from the Masters. And I can't remember his name, Paul McGinley, I think, who co-hosts with him sometimes, was basically calling out the players saying, as a European guy, I think for many years it was arrogant that we didn't have enough players over here representing us. And now that that's changed a little bit, he's like, you got the live players gone. How can this place say that it's up with a major or it's the strongest field in golf? It's not the strongest field of golf. And this is where I agree with them. The strongest field of golf is the PGA. They automatically take the top 100 in the world and say, come on down. I mean, you can't argue there. Yeah. Everything, even Augusta, just because of the prestige and everything, it's still an invitational and it's still a very close shop to get in there. Very close tied to the PGA Tour and then the whims of Augusta National and the Green Jackets. But where Brandel won me over, he was basically, because the other co-host who was anchoring it, I can't remember his name right now because I got so fired up. People want to suggest that the PGA Tour is, being routed or it's kind of on the retreat because who the fuck's Austin Eckroat? Who are these people winning? This players championship is missing X of the top whatever players. And I liked a stance that he said where he basically stuck up for, the tour and goes, you know what? It is the flagship event of the tour. It's a chance to celebrate the hard work and the structure and yada yada yada. There's a vision for it. And he came back to what I've been preaching this whole time. Those guys who are complaining and the people who are upset, he goes, "This is a moment in time. It's a blip. It's a blip." He goes, 10 years ago, look at the top 10. Those guys are not in the top 10 anymore. He's like, the guys that left for the live, we're not going to be in the top 10 anymore in 10 years or 5 years. They won't. And I think it goes back to, because the real news, when you said breaking news, I thought you were gonna bring up Jay Monahan's comments today, because in case you missed it, folks, welcome to the show. I thought that the deal was dead in the water, because on the outside, and what it reminds me of is a little bit. So what we're talking about is the PGA PIF merger non-merger agreement. Quick recap for those new to the class. Last June, everybody put down their guns. They dropped their their lawsuits, and PIF that owns Live and the PGA said, let's partner in some way, shape, or form. The game is better. Well, the PGA Tour went ahead with strategic partnerships elsewhere in money, not shutting off the PIF deal. But my read was that was going to be seen as disrespectful to the PIF. But I guess it was always written in there that they could take other investors, but the PIF had first right of refusal. So without having to do too much homework, you got to just assume maybe the PIF was like, no, we're already in negotiations over here. You go do your thing, go find other partners if you need to. I thought it was all a scam. I thought, because there's been silence, because John Rahm got sniped. But then I also have to remember, Live is a separate entity than the PIF. We don't know what this new, it might not be anything other than a money share. We'll get to that later. But I thought the deal was falling apart. And all of a sudden today, Jay Moynihan saying we're making great progress. We're aligned in the idea that all the best players playing together at a global stage is what's best for the sport writ large. I still don't see structurally how they're going to do it.
No.
But I guess at the end of the day, that's the big breaking news for me, is that I guess the PIF PGA deal is not dead in the water yet. We didn't see this fucking coming from a mile away. So it's not that I don't trust Jay. Like, people are, hey, you can't trust anything that comes out of his mouth. No, he's a busy man. He can only let so much go. And he's trying to negotiate this. Remember, this was started behind his back too. Jay Moynihan didn't pick up the phone and say, "Yeah, sir, let's do business." There were some other guys associated with, big time PGA Tour business that basically had a cup of coffee and a round of golf with this guy. And that's how it all started. Look around the globe, though. The Saudi soccer league's not really taken off. There, where this PIF is having a better, I would say, I'm not a business guy, so I'm not gonna say return on investment, but it seems like they're getting more bang for their buck, which is the dumb man's way of saying it, through investing in these leagues and owning the teams than they are going to be to put on a product. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Liv's going to fold. They're going to put all that money into whatever investment they're going to put into PGA Tour enterprises. And the PIF is going to get out of the golf business of putting on a product and go back to doing, because folks, at the end of the day, the PIF is not a sports league. It is a fucking investment fund. They're not going to just bleed money. All of this might have been a macro political play. Like, let's go hint at a product, but the product's not delivering. And what pisses me off, and why Brandel Chambly is now my new hero, because guys like Paul McGinley were coming out and trying to say, because of all this disruption, you don't have the best fields anymore. And, it's really weak. It's not weakened. And Chambly came from the top ropes with what I've been saying this whole time about how deep the bench is on the PGA Tour and its feeder tours. And our original, and I've been saying it for years, the line of demarcation between a really good professional golfer and a champion is thin. And just because John Rahm left doesn't mean that they're not going to have new champions. And he was right. It's a moment in time. Live is a moment in time. It's part of the history of the game. Even if it sticks around, I don't think it necessarily changed it for what they thought it was going to change it for.
No.
And also the biggest lesson that we've pulled out of this, and then I want to hear your thoughts on this final thing and anything else I've said. I mean, you are on this show too. This isn't just the Bud Show.
I sure am.
I've been going a mile a minute in Atlantic City. Go. What do you got?
But that is exactly what Austin Eck wrote. It just proves the depth. Like, people say, like, I always go back to, people keep calling him No Name, or these other guys like Nick Taylor, who is not a no name. He's been around for a couple of years. Like that.
He was until he.
Exactly. Like, these are guys that proves the depth of the PGA, and Brandon Chambly is 100% right here. And that's, look, the PGA is going to be fine. The depth is going to be proven. And that's, I think all this, the deal being back on the table, or even if it never actually left the table, even though we thought it did, I think it just proves that they are both sides are at least willing to talk about a global structure. I agree with you that I don't see where that global structure truly falls into place just yet. But I would have to say that if that's where if they're discussing a deal again, it's got to be heading towards some sort of restructuring of the level of tours. I think that's the only way that both sides get what they want out of it. So more to come on that. We'll see how that all shakes out. This was just fresh news today, but Jay Moynihan is not somebody who was shied away from, at least in the first episode or two of Full Swing. Are you ready to get into Full Swing, or did you have one more point?
The
One more
last point I
question.
wanted to bring up was actually something that we'll notice, and it's a detail when we get into Full Swing. So in Full Swing, if
Perfect.
y'all haven't watched it, season 1 or season 2, get into it. The best way to put it is all right. So we are 11 minutes and 6 seconds. I'm at a summer camp conference in Atlantic City
Woohoo!
right now.
I'm
Yeah,
impressed it
big.
took you this long to mention summer camp thing, given that
Well,
information.
I've been spending my entire day pivoting conversations away from summer camp and into golf because I see old friends and they say, "What are you into nowadays?" I'm like, "Well, it's funny you should ask."
Yeah, let me tell you about divots and pivots.
Yeah, and so we talk about this, and these folks, I've had more than one person say, "Oh, I just watched Full Swing," or "Oh, I just
Yep.
started Full Swing," because the level with which they deliver golf stories is just at that kind of every
Oh, so
person
good.
level. And a subtle thing they do is after a tournament concludes or whoever they're following for that tournament, they just flash it right up there on the screen
Mhm.
where they finished and how much money they made.
Yeah.
And this is the lesson that's coming out of this battle of professional golf and upending it is I think the players' lesson, and the players can say all they want. I do it for the trophies. It's your living. You do it for money.
Mhm.
I get that what motivates you might be trophies and stuff, but this is your profession. Okay, cool. I've said this before that years ago when we didn't have instant accessibility to our athletes, to media, to anything outside of, your town hall, and whatever you heard about in church on Sunday, hearing numbers like understanding the idea of a human having $50,000 in 1900 for an event, fucking mind boggling. We
Yep.
are numb to money right now. And I don't
Mhm.
mean that, I don't mean that like we don't want it or need it or it's not flashy or important to us, but I don't think that people tune in to a golf tournament to see how much money these guys are making. I think
No, not at all.
what we have done is in kind of in an innocent way, the powers that be mistook what motivates the players with what motivates the audience.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, when I know that it's a shit show behind closed doors, or that there's tension, or that there's disruption, it makes me even sicker to my stomach to think that, like, and why are we forking out all this money? And
Mhm.
I go back to the live guys who voluntarily picked up their product, their own little contribution, and they walked over here and they're still beating their chest and pissed off that they're not getting the same level of respect and everything like that. You changed such an important factor and variable. And I'm not saying that,
Mhm.
by the way, maybe the outcome is that we have a new ranking system, because that's what I've been saying is it seems to
Yeah.
me that us as players, and the mantra you keep hearing is just figure out a way to who's the best. Okay, we're smart people.
Mhm.
We can take the data that is out there and we can calculate. You can be handicapped based on the other players. Now, what's funny to me is so much of that still relies on official world golf rankings to
Yeah.
determine the strengths, because you have to have that as some
It's the
sort of
only way.
foundation.
The tours are different. There's so many different tours out there that qualify for the rankings, and there's at such
Yes.
different levels of difficulty. You have to have a formula,
Right,
and
so
what
that
they're asking for is for the formula to be rewritten. And we said it last week. We've said it for many times. That's not a quick and easy process. There's so
I
many
love
factors that come into play for that.
I love what you just said there, because you didn't say that's not possible. Okay, so if it has to be
No.
rewritten, it has to be rewritten, but you need some freaking patience, because you are the ones who upended everything. You said we're going to go do this, like, all right, now fuck. We had a good thing going, had a few thousand people in the same system. Now we've got this 4 dozen, 5 dozen over here, and we
Mhm.
know that 4 or 5 of them belong, just from, but then I go back to, why do we know that they belong? Because they built that reputation in this system. They thought that they were going
Yes.
to take the gravitas of the PGA Tour with them to live. Nobody's saying that John Rahm's not maybe the most talented golfer alive at the moment. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He chose to remove himself from a consistent test on that. And they thought that they were, you know what this feels like? the live golfers are starting to drive me a little nuts. Like Bryson, I love that Bryson's coming out saying, "Hey, I think we're gonna have a deal soon. This is great. Golf deserves this." Fuck off. Nobody wants your crushers. All right,
No,
we want you
not at
back.
all.
Playing Doral or wherever we're gonna see.
Yeah.
The guys Doral. Doral's just on the brain. But at the end of the day, it's almost like they were the students who said, "You know what, gang? How about if we all just agree not to do the essay, and then Mr. Johnson can't flunk us all?
Yeah. Well,
Let's
guess what?
go." And guess what? 88 people decided to do the essay, and you all got Fs. You made choices, live for them. I like how DJ approached it in full swing. He didn't
Yes.
make. I love how simple he puts it. I don't less work, more money, more time with my family.
But he also made a great point. Speaking of DJ,
So let's get into full swing.
Yeah, because there's one thing. Dustin Johnson in both seasons of Full Swing now has hit us with just true. At least the way I viewed it, as just genuine truth about the way he views the game, the way he views his life. Like he doesn't. I don't think there's.
Is he speaking his truth?
I don't think there's anything that guy's just saying for entertainment value. I think he's just saying how he feels, and he flat out said it that after the U.S. Open last year, he said he got lazy. And he realized he needed to grind more to get back to where he was when he was competing weekly. Folks, the key part there is weekly. Live does not compete weekly. The PGA Tour does compete weekly. I mean, it's like there's a realization coming to the fact that if he wants to be able to compete with the best and prove that he's still one of the best in the world, he's got to play regularly at a competitive level, whether that is, here we go, the John Deere Classic or the Masters. They're all still highly competitive fields and tournaments where you're going to build a callus, you're going to build that edge that you need to compete with the best. And I just don't think those high pressure situations are being built or created on the Live Tour for these guys to be able to experience that. Because as you were talking about the John Rahm, we know that he's probably one of the best skilled golfers in the world. Yeah, we do. But the other thing that we also view some of these guys as part of their resume to be one of the best golfers in the world is how they stand up in the moment, in those high pressure moments, in those signature moments in a big tournament. And Brooks has proven that he can still do it, even though he's on the Live Tour. And I love Brooks for that. That's fantastic. But some of these guys aren't going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to step up to the moment. And they lose that aspect when it comes to at least the fans' view as who's the best in the world. And I think that can't be forgotten here. They need to put themselves in more competitive situations. And if that is the DP World Tour, the Asian Tour, whatever tour that lets the Live guys play on throughout the year, then yeah, go out there and grind on that, just like Joaquin Niemann did.
Grind on that.
That's what you got to do. That's fine. You're just going to bring more eyes to that tour, and that's great for golf. They can still be their product, but if they sit around and be lazy like Dustin Johnson basically said he was, they're not going to get anywhere. They're not going to move forward.
It's like Dustin Johnson got that nice severance check, and he decided I'm gonna I got severance for 2 years. I'm gonna take a year off before I start looking for a job. And then when he started looking for a job again, he was like, "Shit, I'm kind of rusty."
Yeah.
So let's start at the top there, because the full swing. I hope they continue to do it. I think they will. One of the critiques I have is how they, and this is for the golf fan. I don't think the every person would care this much. It bothers me that they throw things out of chronological order. Meaning,
me too.
And I understand why they're doing it. They want to focus on the story, the individual, the message, kind of like the Joel Damon episode, all about mental health.
Sure.
And it was a great story arc. And they had this parallel journey of him and Wyndham Clark, who went from being a hothead to a U.S. Open champ, and then Joel breaking down. By the way, if you haven't watched it yet, spoilers and all that kind of shit, whatever.
Crushed me. And I'll tell you what, that was the episode I chose to show Anna as someone who's not a golf fan, someone who doesn't understand golf. And I paused it at one point to explain to her why they were jumping from tournament to tournament. And she looked at me and said, I'm hooked. I need to know if he wins this thing now. Like, I specifically chose that episode too, but
is your audio choppy, or is that just choppy to me? Can you hear that?
I think it's just choppy to you in your hotel room internet.
In my busted ass. Hey, listen, actually, shout out Marriott Bonvoy. I've got that free upgraded high speed Wi-Fi, son. All right, no, I'm glad to know, because I would really hate that if the dulcet tones of Andrew LeDuc, aka Mr. Mallard, was getting drowned out by shitty Wi-Fi. Joel Damon is becoming the best part about I've been very hyperbolic. You can tell that I'm hanging out with a bunch of camp counselors and camp directors because I'm all like, everything's the best, guys. Let's go. The
Was
best
that
part of this.
from the Lego movie? That song, "Everything Is Awesome." That sums it up. Sounds like.
Blow my brains out. The one of the things I enjoyed about Joel Damon's story arc there was the dichotomy of, yeah, I'm famous, but I've also been playing the worst golf of my life. It
Yep.
goes to, he got famous by being himself. He didn't get famous by winning a lot. He got famous by being himself and being genuine. And then all of a sudden, when he wasn't playing well, he was still himself and genuine. He didn't lose any fans. He's probably gained fans from this because of his vulnerability and his openness and his willingness to kind of share his experience, not just through Full Swing, but in general. The guy has beaten cancer. He's bouncing back from, playing shitty, and hopefully he does get some good run. And I love his caddy, Gino Benali. I mean,
easily the most popular caddy on tour right now because of Full Swing.
And when he even said that, he's like, I guess I'm one of the more famous caddies. He goes, and that feels like such an assholic, because caddies are like speechwriters. They're supposed to be integral and supportive, but in the background. And although the modern game has changed, I mean, that maybe might have been the legacy of Jack Nicklaus, show up, keep up, and shut up. And that's back when the club would donate or, provide the caddies. The professional game has changed now. It wasn't always you and your caddy road tripping around and, you're bankrolling them. The game has changed a lot there in the caddy game, and it's got a long way to go. But one thing I like about the pro game is how much you hear those golfers saying "we," and you hear the caddy saying "we." Hey, are we going to practice later? And then the pros say, like, "Man, if you don't, golf is the most isolating feeling in the world." Joel Damon said it. Do you know what it feels like to be more famous than I've ever been and go out and shoot 76?
He nailed it with that line. It was powerful.
It was powerful. It moved me. Speaking of, all right, just real quick aside, I've had a problem since I've been in Atlantic City. They've got some decent little shops around here, but I spent probably an hour at Bass Pro Shops, and I got myself a nice little coffee mug here for the morning.
I'm surprised you only spent an hour in there.
There were other stores to go to.
Oh, that makes sense then. But you mentioned some of the kind of the production and the way that they put this together. I had a couple of production notes as well, actually, when it came to Full Swing that I found interesting. One of the very first things I noticed right away was anytime they flashed one of the golfers' names, who they are on the bottom of the screen, PGA guys had a world ranking associated with underneath. It would say, Rory McIlroy, world ranked, whatever. Anytime it was the live guys, it just said live golfer underneath it. And what I couldn't figure out, I'm curious to know your take on this. I couldn't figure out if that was a dig at everything going on, or if it was, and I actually think I lean more this way. I think it was maybe a way to almost extend an olive branch where they're not going to put that not John Rahm, but who's one of, the Dustin Johnson, I think, has fallen into like the 300s or something like that. Like, it doesn't feel right to put Dustin Johnson in world number 3 something. Like, do you think they were trying to save that, like, kind of, I guess, awkwardness of like bringing light to, we all know that's not really it is, but it is because of the way the system's set up? Or do you think it was maybe a little bit of a jab at, you don't get points anymore, so you're just going to be a golfer?
I think it was just two things. I didn't notice that. Now I got to go back and watch it again because I was going off about the money thing and how, like, I mean, I think that's a good barometer for somebody like Anna or anybody who's newer to the game and be like, hold on, what? Like, that
was her reaction when she saw Wyndham Clark won 3.6, I think it was, for the U.S. Open. She went, "How much did he win for one tournament?" I said, "I know." I said, and then of course I go, "Well, it is a signature event. It's a major championship." So she looked at me like, "What?" I said, "Okay, I lost you. Sorry."
It's like when my wife tries to explain to me why certain makeup or products cost as much as they do. I'm just like, whatever. I'm playing Tobacco Road and Tot Hill Farm this summer, so whatever you want, honey, go for it. I don't think it was a dig, but now that you've pointed that out, I've been sitting here kind of mulling it over. I think it was just a subtle production stroke of, let's see if this, and I think the message it sends, it could be seen as a couple of different ways. Like you said, could be out of respect for people like DJ, where it's like, we're not going to say he's the 700th ranked or 105th ranked or 97th ranked,
whatever he is.
Whatever he is. Same thing with Bryson. It could have been a request from the live guys. Like, hey, we don't,
could have been,
it could have been, I doubt it. I doubt those kind of details are run by, the subjects. Or it could have just been a genuine, I don't know if I would
Like,
say oversight, because the official
but they
World
didn't.
Golf
But they
Ranking
didn't
still
put.
lists
They
these
didn't
guys.
put thought into it, though. Is what you're saying? Like they didn't put. Like they didn't take any extra thought to make that decision. It was
I
just like
say that, but I say they didn't, but or I say that's a possibility. But Netflix is not some rinky dink.
no.
This is not an oversight, especially like you said, if they did it with all these other golfers and they didn't do it with the live golfers,
Yeah, there had to have been some thought behind it.
somebody
Because they
fact
didn't
check us
shy
on
away.
this.
They didn't shy away from saying that Alex Fitzpatrick was ranked 700 something
Can
that also played perfectly into the
can
depth
we
of
talk?
that
Can we
story.
talk about shadows real quick?
Yes,
That was
because that episode was so Joel Damon, Wyndham
oh,
Clark, my favorite episode. For all the feels, Alex Fitzpatrick and Matt Fitzpatrick, the shadow. I think it was just titled "The Shadows."
it was called Shadows, yeah, or
Was
In the
easy
Shadows or something like that.
or something like that. But that was also easily my second favorite. Fantastic production, fantastic
Well,
storytelling. Loved it.
pump your brakes, Junior. What was it? Let the play people who haven't seen it give us. Yes, I enjoyed that too. So if you don't know, Matt Fitzpatrick, Alex Fitzpatrick, the quick backstory there is Matty Fitzpatrick won the U.S. Open a couple years at Brookline, at the Country Club at Brookline, one of the original 6 country clubs that made up the USGA. He had also won the U.S. Amateur at that same course 10 years before, where his little brother Alex was on the bag for him. It was straight out like this was like he was 19. Matt was out of Northwestern. He looked like he was 12, and his brother, who was 14 at the time, it was straight out of Francis We Met and the greatest game ever played, and he ends up winning the U.S. Amateur. He comes back, he ends up winning the U.S. Open, and his brother's on site for it. But the whole kind of story arc was, what's it like, when you look up to him, you love him, but you're always in his shadow, and you're trying to be a professional golfer. And then they shift to the team event in Zurich, which was really cool, that Matt Fitzpatrick wins the U.S. Open, has no reason to play back-to-back or even to play the next couple tournaments, does it to give his little brother a start on the PGA Tour. And then it starts coming full circle. Alex gets a couple starts on the DP World Tour. This is off screen that I just remember following the story.
Yeah.
And then he shows up at the U.S. Open where, he's never beaten his brother in a tournament ever before. And he ends up finishing like T17 or something like that. And his brother finishes like, 90th.
Well, wasn't that the Open Championship, not the U.S.
Open. Sorry, my apologies. The Open.
Because he qualified as one of the top 19 on the Monday qualifier for the Open Championship.
Yeah, he was on. He basically, he qualified under his own accord, and then he goes on to play out of his mind on the weekend, and he's doing okay. His girlfriend, Keeney or whatever.
I'm glad you brought that up. Their dynamic was awesome.
It's so interesting when you see athletes who play the same sport end up together, because you just never know how it's going to work out. But also the Keeney family, if Rachel Keeney, whatever, great golf pedigree, that family. One of the brothers, Keeney, is Keeney. I got to figure that out. That's going to bug me. Moving on. So we've talked about the shadows. Alex Fitzpatrick. I loved that episode. Joel Damon. I think that's going to be almost everybody's leader in the clubhouse. Something else from the early episodes, and then we can hear from Underdog before we dig into the meat of the end of that, was I enjoyed watching the Rory episode, the arc of, I feel like I've been a sacrificial lamb. What have I been doing for the last 12 months? Sometimes I just want to say, fuck it and do whatever I want. And what I love, and this is a good life lesson sometimes, especially, he was like, you know what? It hit me. I found out the same way that everybody else did. I put in all this blood, sweat, and tears, this effort. I give. And then when it came time to make a decision, I'm not at the table. I get a phone call like after the fact. He's like, and I'm like, okay, that's where you belong. So if you're just the talent, go be the talent, go play golf. And people forget he did not have to walk away from his player advisory council seat either. No. He could have just stopped doing all the extra bullshit that he was doing in defense of everything. But I think he just wanted a clean break. And you got Jordan Spieth in there for the remainder of Rory's term. And that group now is also on the board of directors for PGA Tour Enterprises. Yeah. So it's definitely Liv has, for better or worse, shaken up the landscape. But as we've said before, that's the same way as saying you can say that, an arsonist has helped and, shaken up your lifestyle, because now you have to build a new house. It wasn't exactly how you planned on doing it, but since we're doing it, we might as well do it. And speaking of doing it, let's hear from Underdog Fantasy.
Fantasy Sports Corp and Underdog Fantasy have teamed up to start your fantasy season off in the win column with Best Ball. What is Best Ball? It's quite simply the easiest way to win. No team management, no trades, no waivers. It's their biggest contest ever, and it has only gotten bigger. You simply have to sit, and win. You don't even have to set your lineup. Always get your best score every week. Just enter a contest, draft your team, and Underdog will do the rest. What could make this even better? How about free money, up to $100 using our exclusive promo code? Go online now and use the promo code DIVPIV to double your deposit up to $100. You tell them Gingerbread sent you. Good girl.
All right, let's wrap up this this full swing talk, because look, we could honestly probably talk for 2-3 hours on full swing. There's that much packed into this 8-episode mini series, and I do want to get to the Ryder Cup portion, because that took up two to three full episodes and it was great. But real fast, one quick kind of more lighthearted question: Tom Kim. We all saw the fun side of Tom Kim. I think it was like episode 3 or whatever it was. Do you think he's now cursed? I didn't even realize he did this last year. Is he now cursed because he accidentally went into the champions locker room, obviously not being a champion, and he actually parked in a champions parking spot too at Augusta? I don't know if you picked up on that in the episode as well, but Scotty Scheffler was giving him shit for that too. So is Tom Kim now going to feel a curse because he accidentally kind of walked on hallowed ground without the permission or the gravitas to do so?
Will he feel a curse? No. Will we see a curse until he wins the green jacket? Yes.
Exactly.
I did see that, and immediately I recognized the background just from photos and being a geek about it. And I was like, "Holy fuck, that's not the regular locker room.
That's not the fucking lounge, man.
Yeah, it's not the players' lounge, bro."
He was looking for the cafeteria.
The champions locker room is about the size of my hotel room here. Like it's not a big space. It's got a couple of card tables in the middle and then just the lockers for the champions. If you haven't seen it before, I think we've told it on the podcast before. There's a great story of Butch Harmon, Tiger Woods, and Phil Mickelson in the champions locker room. One of them's trying to have lunch. The other one is trying to change, and there's information exchanged about. Yeah. So, but the point being, because when they tell the story, Tiger's like, there's not a lot of room in this, or Butch Harmon's like, there's not a lot of room in there. Like, it's pretty close quarters. And so I don't think he's cursed, but I definitely noticed that. And I thought to myself the same thing. Until this guy wins, everybody is going to give him shit about going to the champions locker room and be like, well, if you wouldn't have just crossed that threshold. The parking lot thing, I thought I didn't know that Tom had actually parked in somebody else's spot. Yeah. I thought Scotty was just pointing to his own, like, hey, you see where the champions get parked.
So I will say that may have actually been it. I could be wrong, because I did have that thought too, where I was like, oh, you know what, maybe Scotty was just like razzing him and saying that's my car in that spot, because I think
that's what he was saying.
It might have been that. I could be wrong in there, but with how fast they showed Tom Kim getting into the car, like in the same shot, like I just kind of assumed it was actually his car.
So Tom Kim, I'm glad you brought that back to before we get into, because Tom Kim also is going to be somebody this year who's going to be fun to watch in the President's Cup later on, but then the big thing, from the pick 6 to all roads lead to Rome, to Rory and Joe, to the whole bit. Let's get into the Ryder Cup a little bit, folks. I know it's the Players Championship week. We'll get to it a little bit.
Just give us a few more minutes here.
But this. I was a little, and so when I said my production kind of critiques early on about the lack of linearity and the chronological order of things, or whatever you want to call it, it's a personal preference. Like I said, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell stories with morals. They're not trying to just do a recap of the year. PGA Tour has been behind the scenes before. Like you can see, they have all these films. This is not, it's similar to, I guess similar to Hard Knocks, where they're not trying to hide who wins or loses. They're just trying to give you the stories. Although they do a little linear job. They get to this point and I started geeking out, and I had already seen the clip where Keegan was saying on a podcast how he explained the process. When they got the call, they thought they meant it was going to be for the right reasons. They thought they meant it was going to be like, hey, get ready. We're coming to pick, the TV crew's on the way.
I think he's the only one Zach called to say he didn't get it.
I want to say else. We didn't see that, but I want to say
we didn't see it. Yeah,
had to have been other calls that were made. Otherwise, I think that point would have been called out at this point.
True. Yeah.
I used call and point 4 times in one sentence for those keeping score at home. But you think about it logically, in Keegs, you want the story to come true, but what's a better story? Like making what gets the better headline? The plane lands safely, or the plane survives emergency landing and 2 people die. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
sorry. But at the same time, these guys are used to having camera crews around them all the time. So you want to stay in that positive mindset. But I loved how he bounced back. I'm sure it wasn't quick or easy, and I'm sure it sucked. Especially with the outcome the way it was, but to see him with his family and to see him like telling his little boy, we got to root him on. Let's go, JT. When he and his son were saying, let's go, JT, I started tearing up.
Yeah. I totally agree.
We thought we were going to get some hope going as Americans. So it goes through the pick six, and you get to see the Justin Thomas pick was almost a foregone conclusion, I think, where he's on scholarship. You get a blip in the road when you're Justin Thomas and you're a major winner 2 times over and you're just having a slump, but you were already also kind of on your way out of it. Remember, he was a lip out away from making the FedEx Cup playoffs. And then who knows,
I know.
To that point, you can go on a run. So him getting in there, we all knew it was going to happen. I kind of liked seeing the process of the other guys and their reactions. Just very busy. Like let's get it on. I love. By the way, I'm a Brooks fan.
Brooks had like no reaction at all. He was like, "Okay, cool, yeah, see you in Rome, bye."
Let's get. I mean, that's his brand, right? So
I know
get to
it is.
It's time to work. That's what we're gonna do. I still love me some Brooksy, and I miss him. You know what I don't hear though about those guys? Real quick back to Liv. We haven't shit on Liv in 20 minutes, and it's not a shit on Liv. It's just bringing him back because I said Brooksy. Yeah. And I just thought about this. None of those guys are genuinely out there fighting for the tour anymore. They're all barking for official world golf ranking points because as much as they want to talk about team sport, all they want to do is get into the majors. Yeah. And seeing in these episodes how that's team golf. And this is actually where the epiphany was going to bring, or I had an epiphany while watching this. Here's where we're going to fix it. 37 minutes, 10 seconds into this show. I'm going to fix, because we've tried World Golf Championships before. We've tried introducing just a bunch of tournaments. Official World Golf Rankings had its run. It's been 35 years, whatever, 40 years that we've had them. Cool. Let's figure out something else. What do all those guys want almost more than majors? And we saw it. They want to be on the Ryder Cup. Yeah. I think that Ryder Cup USA and Ryder Cup Europe we are a data saturated universe. We have all the data points that we could ever want. And then you do even have 4, sometimes 5 times a year where these guys are all in the same field. Figure it the fuck out and make the Ryder Cup rankings the official world golf rankings, because, and you can just do one. We call them the Ryder Cup rankings. And that, again, I don't know how you figure it out, but I mean, Data Golf is a source. You see people like Dylan Dithier and Dan Rappaport and some of these serious like golf journalists, not a couple schmucks in a basement talking about golf for now. But they keep referencing Data Golf because Data Golf does use some of the other indicators and stuff. And that's what they say. Like, 46 of the top 50 in Data Golf are going to be at the Masters. So Taylor Gooch, you're one of the 4. Sorry. You're 92% are getting in. You're not the other, you're the 8% subtle flex. So let the Ryder Cup take over the rankings. And from there, I think you would have I think you would get the fans behind it much better, much easier too. It's something tangible. Unless you're a super golf nerd or super competitive yourself, you can't wrap your head around why the fucking rankings are so important. The only tangible thing we can say is it gets you into the majors. And even that, it's kind of like, well, how many? 30 for all of them? Well, no, it's 30 for that tournament orders. Okay, so the top 50. Yeah, but then that one does the top 100. Oh, okay. Well, that one uses it. So make it simplified. Everybody knows what the Ryder Cup is. It's the biggest event in sports or in golf. Lean into it and let those rankings take over. And then I think you'll see some people settle down. We don't give a shit about your money. We see you cry.
I love that, and I love that idea. I hadn't thought about that, but you mentioned it, and it makes sense. And all I know is that watching those Ryder Cup episodes of Full Swing, it just made me want the Ryder Cup to be right now again. It brought me right back to the excitement and to the disappointment and all the emotions that was with this past Ryder Cup. I need it to be now. I need it to be back.
I need it. So but you know what we have before though?
What we had before? What we have?
What we have.
Oh, we have the players right now.
We have the players. All right,
Yes, we do.
folks.
Now let's break down the course quickly. I got my stats, but you are the original local to the TPC Sawgrass, course. You know more about the course than I do, and probably more about the course than most other podcasters, golf analysts, whatever you want to call out there from your own personal experience being there a few times. So we have obviously the basics of the course, what it is 17, and the par threes are monsters here and all that jazz. My quick question as we get into this though is, this is a TPC course. Is this TPC course very similar to kind of the way it's laid out and the challenges of it to all the other TPC courses out there, or does this one really stand out from the rest as just being that much harder?
This one stands out from the rest for being that much harder. And it was the original. Before this was the first tournament players club course. And the whole idea around this, Dean Beeman was the PGA Tour commissioner who kind of had this vision, and they started playing what they wanted to be. It wasn't necessarily going to be the 5th major, but he just said we needed a showcase event. In the first few years, it bounced around South Florida, and then it bounced around a couple of other courses in the Ponte Vedra area, most notably Sawgrass Country Club, where yours truly once shot 74, humble brag, but I was like 17 years old. It was a pretty good run. And then they built this famously too. Dean Beeman found the people who owned the swampy ass land, and he got 400 plus acres for $1. It's framed. It's in the clubhouse. He got Pete Dye to come out there. Pete Dye at first was like, can't do it. It's swampy. And then they were like, actually, he started to see the vision, sketched it out on its napkins. That's up on the clubhouse right there. And when it opened, you want to talk about, is this harder than the others? It opened as the first TPC, and now we've got 30, 40 TPC properties worldwide that are all associated with the PGA Tour owns kind of the TPC or is affiliated with the TPC network of families. Most of the courses either have hosted or currently have hosted a PGA Tour event, or they're slated to, or they're at that caliber. But to your original question, Sawgrass Stadium course did two things. It introduced this idea of stadium golf, and not just the idea of building stadiums around the holes, but making it more of a spectator-friendly sport, where previously golf courses were laid out, even if it was an out and back, which is where the terms on your scorecard, you see out and in, the outward 9 and the inward 9, because you always didn't make the turn at the clubhouse back in the day, boys and girls. That's why that's where the halfway house came. You can't pop into the grill, so you have to make the halfway house. When he designed it, he was thinking to himself, and really Dean Beeman, again, back to Beeman, Beeman was only 5'6", 5'7". And the first thing he did when he became PGA Tour commissioner is he went to a couple of tournaments outside the ropes, because he wanted to see what's the fan experience like. And he's like, I can't see shit. People are bringing ladders. You have to walk a mile, and you got to like run up and get. So he wanted a course that was laid out for a fan-friendly experience in a couple of ways. Both the front 9 and the back 9 have similar starts. Both are mid-range par 4s. Both are followed up by reachable par 5s. They go opposite directions in the wind. That way, if you get the short end of the draw for Thursday and Friday, doesn't matter. It's going to be flipped the next day. So there's one of them. And then they also have a lot of switchback holes, so that as a fan, you don't have to travel too far. You can stay in one location and see 2, 3, 4 vantage points. When they were moving around all the dirt, to build this thing, to get down to the good soil, around 17, famously, that's where they were pulling the best sand. And that's where they were building these mounds up for the stadium seating and everything. And Pete Dye said, I've only got 17 holes here. And Alice had to convince him, just dig out the rest and make it an island. And, bada bing, bada boom, we have the 17th. This one's harder. Every hole is basically if you look at it, every hole involves both a draw and a fade. So a left to right and a right to left shot. There are accessible par 5s, and then there are some serious risk par 5s. And then the closing, I'm biased, super fucking biased, but the best 3-hole close in golf, you've got a reachable par 5 that bites you with water. Then you've got 17, which is a short, should be easy pitching wedge. But a pitching wedge from 137 is a whole lot different, with 27,000 people screaming, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have 18, which is a bear of a par 4 right up against the lake the whole way. And, nerves going a mile a minute. So this is the key. This is the keystone for a reason. There are plenty of beautiful and magnificent TPC properties and courses out there. And you had TPC Harding Park was the first TPC a couple of years ago when Colin Morikawa won the PGA Championship. That was the first TPC to host a major. Tiger famously hit one of his U.S. amateurs at Sawgrass. So you could tell I can and could go on and on. I like that
Yes, you
question,
could.
though, because TPC is not a brand for the course that's being played. I think it's
Exactly.
a standard. It's a standard of, I don't know, excellence or experience that is also a challenge worthy of a tournament player. And
Yeah.
I'm vamping like this because I told you before we got on, I didn't do my homework this week. I didn't
There
get
it is. It's always once a year.
I didn't get into Fantasy National. Shouts to the Moose. I didn't get in there and crank the numbers out because I honestly feel like I eat and breathe this place, and I'm just going to shoot from the gut this week. So I'm much more curious to hear what your nascent brain to Ponte Vedra Beach and the TPC challenge. What did you come up with this week? What do we have for your key three? And then I'll tell you why you're right or wrong, and then we'll go from there.
No, I love that, and so as always, so I'm using 5, but that's because approach and putting for me is just a staple in there. So my key 3.
That's it. Hold on, real quick. We're making a show edict right now. The key 3 is on top of what we both agree that ball striking or approach, either one, they're the same, and putting are our foundation because you have to find out who's rolling. Yeah, okay, cool. What else you got?
So my other key 3 are strokes gained par 3. Because 3 of these par 3s are in the top 6 hardest holes on this course. Bogey avoidance as well. You nailed it. You got to be able to shape these shots. You got to be able to control the ball, so you can't put yourself in harm's way, because if you do just go a little too far left or a little too far right on one of these holes, where you do have to then fade it back the other way, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be making bogey. And then par 4 is 450 to 500 as well. That's the chunk of the course are those holes. The par 5s are like pretty much all the easiest holes on this course. I know you said that there is obviously some challenges in them, but compared to the rest of the holes, they are the easiest holes on the course. Only 5 of the holes on this course play under par. So this will be, as always, a challenging week. It's meant to be that way. So that's what I got for my key 3: strokes gained par 3, bogey avoidance, and par 4 is 450 to 500. And then what I also did this week is I really broke down and kind of put a numerical ranking value on some of the current form finishes. And as well as previous history on this course. And I tried to find numerical kind of representations of all these guys. I started with a bigger field of probably around 30 golfers. And then kind of slowly, once I had all this data laid out in one spreadsheet, kind of broke it down, used my eyes, used my kind of own knowledge of guys that could play well here, and slowly broke that down to the 9 that I have here. So there is a lot of personal kind of, I guess, opinion into this front 9. It's into this emergency 9. It's not all just numbers. So with that said, let's get into my 9. Since you don't have a 9, you will have a 9. But at this point right now, number 9.
I was about to say for the integrity of our season long race, I will submit a 9 before we go. But I like that you're reminding me 3 times over. I'll say this before you launch our snazzy intro to your emergency 9.
Yes.
I agree with you on the bogey avoidance. You just can't make mistakes. You can't make many mistakes because there's not a lot of opportunities to get those strokes back. Where are those opportunities? You nailed it. The par 5s. So if you're, that's the where, you can rely on those. But if you're playing par 5 strong, that means you're probably playing those long par 4s pretty well. You're dialed in from long range. And I just want to reiterate what you said. Yeah. The par 5s here, 2, 9, 11, and 16, they're all reachable for most of these guys. I'd say 9 is probably the biggest challenge for them, but they're all reachable. But they all have water and they all have serious hazards all around the green. So it is risk reward. And without further ado, now we can talk about Andrew's 9, his strong 9.
My ultra strong emergency 9 this week is going to kick off at number 9 with Hideki Matsuyama. He finished 5th last year. He finished 12th last week. The one thing that I'm worried about with him this week, which is why I put him in my emergency 9, is his putting needs to come alive for him to have success here this week. So yes, he has the course history here. Yes, he has the current form here. But if that putter does not come to play this week, it's not going to go as I hope. But Hideki Matsuyama is worth the risk for me. You probably get him at kind of a value as far as other people maybe overlooking him because of where his putter's been. Number 8, Keith Mitchell. He's only missed 1 cut in the last 5 appearances here. A sneaky horse for the course here. Now he hasn't, really broken the bank with a top 5 or anything. I believe he's got just one top 10, but a lot of. Let me double check that actually right now. So Keith Mitchell, he doesn't even have a top 10. He's got a T13 as his best finish in 2022. But this is a guy who makes the cut here, and he plays fairly well. He's all kind of a top 35 situation. So Keith Mitchell, number 8, number 7, Max Homa, 6th here last year, 8th last week. Max Homa was playing some good golf right now, and then number 6 here is one that I'm telling you, I tried like crazy to actually get him out of my emergency 9 because I didn't like that he kept popping up. But no matter what I did, he kept popping up top of the stats. He kept popping up for all these different reasons. So at number 6, Chesson Hadley.
I like it.
Chesson Hadley, sometimes you just can't ignore the numbers when they're trying to speak to you. So Chesson Hadley, the numbers were screaming in my face. So you were number 6 in my emergency 9. Number 5, Emiliano Grillo. He's made it, at least I only looked back to the past 5
You
tournaments.
cash in on him at least once a year.
I always do. He's made 5 straight cuts, at least 5 straight cuts. I didn't look further than that, so maybe it's more than that actually, but at least 5 straight cuts. He's putting lights out right now. And he did miss the cut the last 3 years here, though. That he's a risk. He's a risk, but I'm not sure he's been playing quite as well as he is right now in previous years. So I'm taking a risk with Emiliano Grillo. And then Nick Taylor, number 4, already won this year. Great form continued after that win. So Nick Taylor this week, he lines up great for this course. And then number 3, I had to put him in my top 3 just because Scotty Scheffler, the defending champ. I know we don't typically go back-to-back champs on this show, but Scotty Scheffler, the defending champ, he's going to be in the mix. He played so good last week, and he switched to the mallet putter with Rory. I'm sure he heard it after the fact, but Rory McIlroy says on air 2 weeks ago that he should bring out the mallet putter, and Scotty Scheffler on the back 9 last week absolutely torched the field with strokes gained putting. He crushed it. He went to a whole nother level. Scotty Scheffler, if he carries that momentum with his putting, that's the only stat for him that is like below average on the season.
That was the only
right
question
now.
mark. He for the last 2 years, the knock on him has been
Yeah.
best ball striker on planet Earth. And then, I think it was, let me see if I got this right. It's credited to Napoleon, but never interfere with an enemy while he's in the process of destroying himself. Rory,
Yep.
I don't know if
Rory,
you paid attention there,
You done
buddy.
fucked up.
Yeah, you awoken a sleeping monster. And when I was
Yeah.
shitting all over Paul McGinley earlier, that's part of the reason why he's getting frustrated with the PGA Tour. He says he misses the era of Ray Floyd in the 80s and like, I'm going to cut your throat, like the cutthroat mentality. He goes, you ever notice how nobody was buddies with Tiger when he was winning all those majors? That was my very soft.
But
Paul
I
McGinley.
But I get what
All right,
you're saying.
back to your 9. Back to Andrew's 9.
So Scotty Scheffler was number 3. Number 2 for me, Victor Hovland. 2 straight top 10s here.
Yeah, he's going to win.
And he's just playing great. Really, the word I used to describe it was smooth golf. He's kind of quietly just out there right now, being consistent and finishing higher than I think a lot of people are realizing he's finishing. So Victor Hovland, number 2, and then my number 1, still the same number 1 from last week, Sam Burns.
What is it with you and Sam Burns?
Because he's on fire right now. That's why he's playing fantastic golf. His tournament history here is nothing crazy. T35 last year, T26 the year before that. But as far as his recent form goes, oops, if I could spell his name right, T30 last week. Then he had a T10 at the Genesis, T3 at Waste Management, finished 10th at AT&T Pebble Beach. He's just playing good. Not only is he playing good, he ranks very well in my key stats this week, and it just feels like at some point he's going to win a tournament that really opens the eyes of his peers, and it feels like the Players could be that type of tournament. Because let's be honest, the Players is a tournament that, as much as I want to throw out Chesson Hadley, as much as I want to throw out Emiliano Grillo or Nick Taylor into my Keith Mitchell into my emergency 9, like these are the guys that I think are gonna make the cut and are gonna overperform their expectations this week. Do I think they're going to win? No, because the Players is the type of tournament where the stars come out and play. And I think Sam Burns is a budding star that's just been on the edge of it for a year or two. And I think this is the week that he can do it.
I am a big Sam Burns guy. So real quick, last kind of closing thoughts for me, because you're right. Like I said, I was 11 minutes in. I mentioned camp for the first time 11 minutes in. I'm still at a camp conference. One of my best and oldest friends is actually sitting 5 feet away from me. He's been enjoying this show. Say hi to everyone.
Tell him Kazuntai.
He said, they said Gesundheit.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
The number one, and for going into any bets this week. So here's a stat to leave you with. They're in their 50th anniversary for the Players Championship. That's year, I want to say 40 at TPC Sawgrass. We have had, since it's been at TPC Sawgrass, we have had four two-time winners, and nobody has gone back to back. Hal Sutton, Steve Elkington, Davis Love III, and Tiger Woods. And the average length between those wins is like 11 years. And so Pete Dye suggested he wanted to create a course that was going to test who is in the best form and the best crowd at this moment. And that's why you have to lean on form. You have to look at recent finish, and why people can come out of literally the fucking blue and win this tournament is because it was designed to test the best people in this moment in time on this course. There's no horse for course on this kind of place because, again, every hole's a fade, every hole's a draw, every hole has water on this course. And the greens, as Jack Nicklaus said the first time he played him, he says, you know what? I've never been good at stopping a 5-iron on the hood of a car. So it's the Players Week. Get fucking pumped for it. And like I said, when in doubt, when you're splicing hairs, go to current form and whoever's riding a hot hand, which is why I do think that we're going to see history this week. And I think that Scotty's going to come through and go back to back.
It wouldn't shock me. That's why I felt obligated to put him in.
Yeah, you can't. I agree with you. There used to be this magic mantra, juju mental thing of like going back to back. Instead, these guys are so finely tuned that when all the cylinders are firing, they're just going to keep pushing that engine until there's a stutter.
So I love it. I'm excited for it. It's St. Patty's Day weekend. So get enjoy yourself. Watch the players. I know I'm going to be out and enjoying myself because it's one of my favorite holidays. Greens
beers. You get it's a golf thing. Greens beers.
Don't put any green in my beer. Just give me
Greens
my beer.
beer.
But that's going to do it for us on this wonderful Tuesday night. And just to remind everybody, the breaking news off the top of the show here, I am an above average golfer. Just don't forget that because 13 is a better score than 14. I'm Andrew LeDuc, aka Mr. Mallet. This is Bud Copeland at This Bud's For You. Since I didn't give our introductions at the start of the show, we are Divots and Pivots on TSPN, that Sports Podcast Network. And we will see you next week to break down exactly what happens this weekend at the Players Championship. We love you guys. And as always, stay classy.